That's it from me. I love the stylistics. That's it from me. See you tomorrow morning. Right now it's midday, and it's Vanessa.
Thanks, Ken. Hello, this is Vanessa Feltz sitting in for Jeremy Vine, and on the programme this lunchtime, a French woman who objected to a man making a graphically lewd comment to her in the street was brutally attacked. Are you offended when somebody even wolf whistles at you? And have you taken action? We're joined by the mother and father of the young woman who died on a first date on a speedboat on the Thames. You decide to stop being a Jehovah's Witness after 20 years in the faith. What happens next? And if, like me, you're one of the sad people who've been glued to Love Island for the last 8 weeks, we reveal all the wonderful things that you could have been doing instead. You can give me a ring on 08000 288 291. Calls are free from most landlines. Some networks and mobile operators may charge for these calls. You can email vine@bbc.co.uk or contact us via text. BBC Radio 2. But first, here's the news with Tom Harrigan.
Thank you, Vanessa. The Education Secretary, Damien Hines, has said it's a scandal that some children are starting school unable to read simple words or speak in full sentences. He's pledged to make significant improvements by 2028. Kerry Scott, a head teacher at a school in Chingford in London, said parents can also help.
I think time is an issue for everybody, but communicating with your children, that's a necessity. That's something that we should be doing all the time, and even in those small moments when we get to be reading with our children, we know that children whose parents read them a bedtime story, for example, have higher literacy levels.
It's emerged that the man who bombed the Manchester Arena last May, killing 22 people, was rescued from the civil war in Libya by the Royal Navy 3 years earlier. Salman Abedi and more than 100 other British nationals boarded the survey ship HMS Enterprise in Tripoli and were taken to Malta to be flown home. A BBC investigation has found women are illegally taking abortion pills which they've bought online at home to avoid enduring abortions on public transport. Currently in England, the tablets must be administered in a clinic or hospital. Scotland and Wales have both recently changed the law to allow women to take the pills at home. Claire Murphy is from the British Pregnancy Advisory Service.
We live in a time where we talk about evidence-based medicine, patient-centred care, and we cannot understand why women having an early abortion are excluded from that and made to bleed on trains in this way. It's simply unacceptable.
The retailer Dixon's Carphone has said a huge data breach that took place last year involved 10 million customers, up from its original estimate of around 1 million. In a statement, the company said personal information, names, addresses and email addresses may have been accessed, but not bank details. The sailor and entrepreneur Tony Bullimore has died at the age of 79 from a rare form of cancer. He was at the centre of a famous rescue in 1997 after spending 4 days inside the hull of his boat after it capsized in the Southern Ocean. And that's the BBC News at 3 minutes past 12. Our next at 1.
Coming up, do you object to being wolf whistled, and have you taken action to stop it? That's after a... Have you seen the shocking video of a woman in Paris being hit in the face by a man just because she told him to stop harassing her? The CCTV footage from last week shows 22-year-old Marie Laguerre walking past a cafe at the same time as a bearded man. She said that he made obscene and degrading comments to her, so she told him to shut up. Moments later, he picked up an ashtray and hurled it at her before going back to Marie and slapping her across the face. The video's been watched more than 1 million times and has caused outrage in France. The government already had plans in place to introduce on-the-spot fines for street harassment from the autumn. Have you objected to somebody wolf whistling you or making lewd comments about you? Were you worried that the person you were standing up to could turn violent? You can give us a call on 08000 288 291 or email vine@bbc.co.uk. In a moment, we'll speak to Grace Campbell, the writer and filmmaker. She's objected to harassment in the past. But first of all, let's find out more about this story from the BBC's Paris correspondent, Hugh Schofield. Hugh, gosh, I have seen it. It is really very shocking to watch, isn't it?
It It is indeed very shocking to watch, and I'll describe it for those who haven't seen it. It shows. It's a security camera, so it's silent, and it's sort of a funny angle. But you see in the back of the picture 2 people walking past each other, and you think, well, there's something odd about that. But obviously there is some exchange. It's a man and a woman, young man and a young woman. There's some exchange because she turns around and says something back to him, and then we see the man disappearing off to the right of the screen, and something happens. We now know that he flings a ashtray at her, and then she obviously says something back to him again, and he comes all the way around, and then it's just off screen, but you can see the sort of effect of it. You can see him hitting her on the head or slapping her on the head, and we know from her testimony, because you need her to explain what's happened. As they crossed at the beginning, he said something very abusive sexually to her. She answered back, saying in French, "ta gueule," meaning in certain terms, go away, shut up, and that's what angers him. He then reacts to her telling him to shut up, and the rest follows. It is an extremely shocking video, and of course, the point that she's trying to make by publicising it is that this is the sort of thing that happens more often than we think, or than people think, and it's been caught on video, but that's pretty a rare event, and it needs to be seen so that people realise what young women like that are having to put up with.
I mean, she says various things that are quite interesting. One is that when she said this to him, she wasn't really saying it to him. She was more saying it under her breath. So she wasn't being confrontational, really. She said she was surprised he even heard it. That's. I mean, she wasn't kind of, all guns blazing, attacking him. She was just saying under her breath, why don't you just...
Well, in the way one does, in the way that one does when something horrible happens. You don't sort of go up to them and then sort of pick a fight. You just say, "Oh, get out of my face," just under your breath. But obviously, it was that which triggered in him, this macho male, this reaction of utter, kind of anti-feminine, this woman's dead to talk back to me. I mean, it's so blatantly awful that you can't help but just get very cross when you watch it.
No.
And I mean, what's interesting, I suppose, was also, I mean, you mentioned there that France is bringing in these new rules about verbal harassment and so on. But of course, I mean, that in a way that's totally irrelevant. I mean, what happened here falls under the law already. I mean, the man attacks her. This is illegal. He needs to be caught, and he needs to be, punished for what he did. And the law which will come in is sort of, and in a way it's much more tendentious or arguable whether it's worthwhile, because it deals with just abuse. But I mean, how realistic is it that people are going to be caught doing that? I mean, it's I don't know. Anyway, there's a big debate about that.
Another element that's interesting, I think, about this horrible story is that actually Marie Laguerre goes home. She doesn't stay and fight. She goes home after he's hit her so hard on the head. Then she thinks to herself, well, hang on a minute, wait a second. This was a public place. There were loads of witnesses. And she goes back, she collects witness statements, and there turns out to be this CCTV, which we've all now seen, and I hope lots of lovely listeners will have a look at it as well, just to see what we're talking about. And so she kind of corrects her initial reaction, which is simply to hunker down in her home, thinking, oh my God, somebody who said something abusive to me has now hit me. She does then,
That's right.
take action. Do you feel that she's become something of a hero, or indeed heroine in France as a result of this?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, these days we live in the world of sort of 3-day wonders, and in a week from now it'll all be forgotten. But right now, certainly she's been. I mean, because she's been very upfront about it. As you say, that's exactly what happened. She went home, and again, as you would, you feel totally shocked, and you don't know how to react. And then you go home and you collect yourself. The sort of your mood settles, and you think, hang on a sec, and so she comes straight back, and of course everyone wants to help her, and it's the owner of the cafe who gives her the CCTV footage, and she wouldn't have known that it was there. But then she's been in the media a lot. She's given interviews left, right, and centre to talk about it. So yes, she has. She's very much being in the eye of the country, and of course, everyone is giving her, utmost support.
Yeah, so we should say there, shouldn't we?
Who wouldn't?
Well, we should say her assailant has still not been caught, even though it looks as though his face is pretty clearly visible on the film, but he hasn't been caught yet.
I'm sure it won't be long till he's found. It's he's got a very distinctive longish black hair. Somebody will know who it is, and I'm sure it won't be long.
Hugh, thank you very much. Now, listening to this is Grace Campbell, the writer and filmmaker. Grace, I mean, you've seen this footage. What was your reaction to it?
I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible, and I can't say that I've ever experienced something as awful as that. But I think what it shows is that's the reason why a lot of the time women don't stand up to people who are doing things like that to them, because they fear that that's exactly what will happen to them. And that girl is so amazing because she did, and then the man felt insulted or whatever, and then punished her for it, which is just so classic. It's like most women at some point have experienced in some way, street harassment, and then loads of times when I've stood up to whoever it is, they've then turned around and been like, oh, well, you're ugly anyway, I don't even fancy you. And then it's a kind of double insult, because once you've rejected them, they then try and reject you and make you feel less of a person. So I think when, watching that, I was just like, wow, how brave of her. But also, that's so horrible that is kind of what happens to women if they stand up to men who do that to them.
I mean, you're a very similar age to Marie Laguerre, and she says that on the day that happened, it had happened already to her several times that day. It wasn't the first time that week or even the first time that day. It's a regular part of life. Do you find that being harassed in the street, whether it's being wolf whistled or being, address some horrible remark to you that's offensive, does that happen to you regularly?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I must say it happened to me, which is really disturbing, so much more when I was a teenager. It used to happen to me all the time when I was a teenager. Like, every time I went outside, I would experience sort of street harassment. Maybe times have changed slightly since then. I'm 24 now. But it definitely does happen. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was followed home after getting off the bus by a guy. And, it was like midnight. I was walking through where I live in North London. And I was really, really scared. This guy was very close to me, kind of making weird noises. And I had to call up my friend and then sort of pretend I was going into a house where I wasn't. This is something that women, I know we've been talking about it so long, but this is something that women are confronted with regularly, and I do think that more needs to be done. I know it's difficult to discipline, fines to people that do this. I do think we kind of need to be doing more to punish people who harass women on the streets.
There will be some people listening, Grace, I'm quite sure, some gentlemen who are thinking, but listen, provided you're polite and you're not obscene, this is a perfectly legitimate way of a man showing appreciation to a woman, whether he gives her a whistle or whether he says, oh, darling, you're looking gorgeous today, or whatever it is, that it's not always hostile and there shouldn't always be a reaction of fury and anger and hurt. Really, it's just a compliment. And even Jilly Cooper, the novelist, said only the other day, and she very much misses being wolf whistled. She used to love it. She took it as a compliment. What would you say to those people?
Well, two things. I mean, firstly, it doesn't make me feel flattered when it happens to me on the street. It makes me feel uncomfortable and actually quite gross. So I would say to those people that there are better ways to get a woman's attention in a public space than wolf whistle or catcall at them. And secondly, I've just completely forgotten what I was saying. But yeah, I mean, I think there are better ways to be doing it. Oh, that's it. I think you can tell when someone is uncomfortable with what you're doing to them. So I think we're all humans. We can pick up on other people's emotions, and we can sense whether or not a woman is comfortable with what we're doing to them. And if you can tell that you're taking them into an uncomfortable place, then stop, then that's the line. So to men that say that and that do think that it's just a form of flattery, like, you can tell when someone isn't comfortable and is walking away and is feeling embarrassed or ashamed on the street, and that's when you need to stop and realise that it's not your place to make a person feel like that.
And I'm speaking to you right now, you're in France. Do you notice any difference in the way in which Frenchmen behave towards women and British men behave towards women, or is it much the same wherever you go?
Well, I mean, I lived in Paris when I was 19 for a period of time, and I must say I grew up in London and then I moved to Paris. I can't say I noticed a huge difference. Like, urban busy spaces are full of people and half of the population are men, and some of those men like to do this. So I don't think it's worse in France, if I'm honest, but it definitely is rife, and you get, in public spaces, that's the thing, it's like in busy public spaces there are lots of people
right, it's a little hard to hear you, Grace, so I'm going to say thank you there and ask you, lovely listener, whether you have seen this footage, what you make of it, whether you feel aggrieved and affronted and insulted and maybe even nervous and worried when you're wolf whistled or when people shout comments at you in the street, or whether, like Ginny Cooper, you remember it as a compliment and you wish it was still going on. The number 08000 288. And Michael from Hampshire says, I would never wolf whistle, but I find women do not take offence, providing whatever is said is a genuine compliment, said politely and without innuendo or strings.
Right, who's with us?
Weekday mornings from 6:30.
Live from Wogan House.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show.
It's time. Kim Wilde, good morning, Kim.
Hey, Chris.
Anton de Beck here with us. Ed Balls.
I'm a retired former professional dancer.
All Saints singing live for us.
So when you're ready, you just gotta let me know.
I want to join All Saints, don't you?
Yeah. 'Cause love lasts forever.
How good was that? How good was that? Kim, have you ever had the Strictly call?
Never asked me.
If you were asked, who would you like to dance with?
Definitely you.
Hey, door.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
BBC Radio 2.
And Poppy's on the line in Lincoln. Good afternoon, Poppy.
Hiya.
Hi, you're a university student.
Yes, I am.
And so what happened to you the other day or fairly recently?
It was actually a couple of months ago, and it ended up with a call to the police.
Really? So what happened?
Yeah. I work for a cake stall, and I was clearing up, and we've got these plastic sheets to food hygiene.
Yeah.
So I was lifting them up and folding them, and this man approached me. Bearing in mind, I'm not even 20. And he was in his late 50s, maybe 60s, so it's a little bit intimidating already. And he came up to me and said, Carl, you look fantastic naked in my bed wrapped in that.
Yuck.
So I just said, right.
Yuck.
So I just said, that's disgusting. How can you talk to somebody like that? So he looked at his friend and then looked back at me and said, yeah, you're right. She would look better in a body bag.
My goodness. So tell me about the bit where the police are called.
So I then left work, handed in keys to security and began walking back to my student house. And they followed me. They'd waited outside of the shopping centre and actually followed me back to my flat. So I had to call the security campus and then I had to call the police as well because I just did not feel safe.
How frightening was it? Did you feel that they really had sort of malign intent, that they were going to try to harm you or attack you?
I did, yeah. They were shouting after me and I kept trying to walk in between like groups of people so they couldn't see me, but they followed me pretty much like a mile, maybe a mile and a half, all the way back to my flat.
This is a couple of men in their late 50s and you're not even 20.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
they should be utterly ashamed of themselves. What happened with the police in the end? Did they
just
find them?
taken a report. No, they just taken a report and they didn't do anything because nobody else had reported any abuse from them.
Right, so what would you say to, I can't believe it, but to anyone who was thinking, oh, well, that man only just thought you were pretty and wanted to come and say so, you know, he didn't mean anything by it and you offended his masculinity or something of that kind, what would you say to them?
But there's a difference between coming up to somebody and saying, oh, you look really nice today, like you have a beautiful smile or your hair looks nice or your clothes are nice, and then saying that you look good naked in somebody's bed.
Absolutely.
There is a complete and utter difference. And it's like, if you want to go and compliment somebody, just compliment them.
And
There's no harm in a compliment.
some people will say, don't compliment them. If you want to, keep your thoughts to yourself. You know, you shouldn't burden a total stranger with your thoughts. You think they look pretty, well, enjoy it, but you don't have to say so to them.
No.
Well, listen, I hope you're all right and you've recovered from that, Poppy. And thanks very much for calling and telling us about it. Thank you. Let's go to Janine. Janine's in Hebden Bridge with a very different perspective, really. Hi, Janine. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. You're going back 18 years ago and you remember it vividly.
Oh, I do. I really do. It was in the summer, so I was quite heavily pregnant with my firstborn, and I was working there at the time, and I was just walking back from my lunch, and there were two builders working, and one of the builders obviously whistled, and I was a bit kind of, oh, for goodness sake, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And his co-worker said, oh, he can't whistle at her, she's pregnant. And he turned around and basically said, yes, but she's lovely. She's beautiful. And I just, wow, thank you. The biggest smile on my face, because the last thing you feel is beautiful when you're kind of waddled down a high street in the heat, and it really made my day. Big smile.
And maybe it was nice because, A, what he said was a charming thing, not a sort of lewd or insulting thing. And he didn't seem to want to control you or intimidate you. He just thought you were beautiful. And maybe it's sort of, the sincerity was the thing that made it nice, maybe.
It was the sincerity afterwards, because at the beginning I kind of thought, oh, really? But when what he said, I just thought, oh, thank you, because I'm not feeling that, but someone has said that I am.
Janine, thank you so much for telling us about it. That memory lingers 18 years. And we're calling this caller Sarah in Oswestry. Hi, Sarah. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Now, you weren't attacked by someone, but you had an experience quite similar to the experience in France by Marie Laguerre, didn't you, recently? What happened?
It sounds like it. I was just walking down the street, and there was a couple of builders working on a shop front, and they wolf whistled and then said, "Hello, darling. Look gorgeous. Come over and get a kiss." Which obviously I didn't respond. "Oh, come on, don't ignore us." And then when I just carried on ignoring them, they turned around and called me a fat.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Which I won't say that on radio. So it became very abusive at that point. And so when people say, oh, it's a compliment, if there's something behind it where they want something in return and you don't give it, then that conversation can soon become very abusive.
Yes, it swiftly turns from something that's sort of pseudo-complimentary to something really quite frightening.
Yeah, because there was no response from me, and they didn't like that, so then I get the insults. And it has affected me because I was very upset. I went home to my husband and I cried. I got hang-ups about my appearance anyway, and it's kind of knocked my confidence going out.
Really? Enough to make you feel that you wouldn't want to leave the house?
Well, not that I wouldn't want to leave, but I'm very aware now when I see groups of men or men looking, it's not complimentary. Like the other lady said that was on earlier, it's how you receive it, and the person receiving it isn't comfortable. They don't know what kind of issues you've got. You don't know what kind of issues other people have got, so you shouldn't be inviting a conversation, in my view.
Well, thank you very much for that call. Thank you. I lament the fact that wolf whistling is now no longer acceptable. I quite used to enjoy being wolf whistled at in my 20s and used to regard it as a bit of banter which made us all smile. Laura in Durham, I don't think men should always be discouraged from giving compliments to women. I've had bad experiences myself. Once in Paris, I felt uncomfortable when a man started taking pictures of me. However, we shouldn't tar all men with the same brush because in the right context, a compliment is a real confidence boost. Christine says, I hated being wolf whistled at when I was young and used to cringe with embarrassment. Then, in my late 20s, I adopted a different approach. I'd stop, I'd look directly at the person and start calling or signalling back. They soon realised I was taking the rise. It took a bit of guts, but I actually enjoyed turning the tables on the morons. Rachel says, I'm a trans woman, and I'm always flattered when I get a wolf whistle. It shows that people appreciate how I look. However, I get nervous that the person who whistled may then realise he's whistled at a trans woman and react badly. It really is a double-edged sword. And Ian in Northampton says, if a woman's made the effort, I think it's a guy's duty to tell her she looks nice. There is a way of doing so which is respectful. And Julie from Wigan says, I'm 52, and while walking down the street at the weekend, had rude and disgusting gestures made towards me by 3 adult men who all seemed to be in their 30s. I muttered under my breath, but was too afraid to actually respond back. One man whistling is not threatening, but when a pack of men wolf whistle, it really is scary.
It's going to be one spectacular day. BBC Radio 2, live in Hyde Park. Headlining Kylie Minogue, Rita Ora, Manic Street Preachers, Boyzone, Band of Love, All Saints, Carrie Underwood, and Lenny Kravitz. BBC Radio 2, live in Hyde Park.
Sunday, the 9th of September. Tickets available now, ladies and gentlemen.
Find out how to buy your tickets by going to the BBC Radio 2 website.
bbc.co.uk/Radio 2.
What happened to Charlie Brown on a December night in 2015 is the stuff of nightmares. She'd got to know a man called Jack Shepherd through the online dating website OkCupid, and that night was their first date. They went for a meal in the Shard skyscraper in London, where they shared a couple of bottles of wine before heading back to his houseboat on the River Thames. Later, the pair headed out in a speedboat that Shepherd owned. He bought it, in his own words, to pull women. The court heard that the boat was badly maintained, it had poor and sloppy steering, and a partially opaque windscreen. Shepherd was also speeding. As they headed along the Thames towards the Houses of Parliament, he was doing 30 knots, that's nearly 35 miles an hour, well above the 12-knot limit for that part of the river. Shepherd told the court he let Charlie take over the steering for a thrill, but the boat crashed and capsized. It's thought that it hit a floating piece of timber. He survived by clinging to the hull of the upturned boat. Charlie was not so lucky. She was found in the water close by and taken to hospital, but later pronounced dead. A post-mortem examination found that she had died from cold water immersion. Shepherd was last week found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He is, however, on the run. He didn't attend the trial, although he was in contact with his legal team throughout. There's now an international manhunt to find him. It's hard to imagine how difficult the last few weeks have been for Charlie's friends and family, and I'm very grateful indeed that Charlie's parents, Ros Wickens and Graham Brown, have joined me in the studio. I mean, you know, you've had to sit there and listen to me telling that story. You've had to sit in court and hear it again and again and again. And I think it must be just unimaginably painful for you to be made to relive what happened on that night.
For us, it's been 2.5 years of ongoing agony. Everyone knows about it now who read the news or listen to news. But it's been ongoing, and the way I see it is I don't want Charlotte's death to be in vain. I want people to know also the fact that there is no legislation for the waterways, and also on the other fact is she'd never been on a speedboat before. She'd never even been on the back of a motorbike. You know, we wasn't that sort of family.
I know when you sat down, the first thing that you two said to me, and I should just say you're divorced, but you brought Charlotte up together, obviously, and the first thing you said was she wasn't a risk taker. She wasn't that kind of a girl. She wasn't someone reckless. She wasn't someone who just plunged in life. Very, very much the opposite.
Yeah, very well educated, went to university, gained a very good degree, had got a very good job and just got promotion within her job. She had everything to live for, and she would never have gone out that night. And he persuaded her through his, charms, presumably, though we didn't know, Graham and I didn't know that she was going out that night.
No.
I'm convinced that when she went out, she would have had no idea that Jack Shepherd would have, in effect, done 0 to 30 knots in 5 seconds, which apparently this speedboat was capable of. She would have no idea of the danger. It's just absolutely surreal that this has happened.
Well, I'm the mother of 2 daughters, and I've seen this not just through their eyes, but actually also my own. She's whisked off for this highly glamorous dinner, and people who are not familiar with the Shard, it's a very expensive restaurant, it's a very glamorous location, and he spends a great deal of money on this dinner for her. Turns out he lives on a houseboat, which makes me think that she would have thought, well, he's very familiar with boats. He's a guy that's, he has expertise in this area. And then he says to her, let's go for a spin in a speedboat on the Thames. I can't think of many women or girls who wouldn't have thought that sounded exciting and glamorous. I really can't.
Absolutely not. And as we've just said, she wasn't a risk taker. She was a family girl. And what happened that night has completely devastated our family. And to watch my other 2 daughters have to deal with the death of their sister, it's so heartbreaking.
I mean, it's obviously agonising for you. And I believe that as you say, that Charlotte was not a risk taker, and she was in phone contact with her sister.
Absolutely,
because she knew perfectly well that, she didn't really know this guy. It was the first date. She wanted to be safe. That was one of her main priorities.
I mean, that was in court. I mean, the conversation on their group was actually in court and used. And one of the last things she said was, "I'm sure it's safe."
Yes.
That was the message to our middle daughter, Katie. I'm sure it's safe.
So she wasn't flinging caution to the winds, far from it. She thought she was with somebody who knew what he was doing.
Yes.
It turns out he knew what he was doing, but his purpose was not safely driving a speedboat. His purpose was seducing as many women as he could. And men, when I say many came forward to say so.
Yes. I mean, there was evidence that there was one specifically young lady who would like to thank. I don't want to say her name. And she knows who she is. She was a witness, and she was in the dock, and I'd like to thank her personally. Also, I'd like to thank all the ones that did come forward, that witnesses, there was many that saw the boat that night speeding. I'd like to thank them, and I'd like to thank the jury. And on the back of that, I'd also like to thank the Metropolitan Police for their outstanding work, especially Chris and Gavin. They know who they are. Gavin, the flow officer, has been outstanding. He has kept us up to date throughout. And he has been, I couldn't have done it without them, perfectly honest.
I mean, this is, an extraordinary story, and it's such a terrible kind of merging of accident and intent and everything else. It's just horrible. But of course, one of the key factors here is that the perpetrator wasn't in court.
Yeah. No.
That the sentence was meted out in his absence, and that he still hasn't been found.
And that is quite crucial to this. I mean, we had absolutely no idea that Jack Shepherd was not going to attend his trial. He had attended his pre-trial hearings, and on the morning, bearing in mind this, as Ros has said, it was 2.5 years to get this to court, and to be told by the police on the first day of the trial that Jack Shepherd is absent was absolutely devastating, because we've never actually heard an account of what happened to our daughter. We think we deserved to hear him stand in the dock and give an explanation of what happened. So when he wasn't here, it was quite distressing. Thankfully, the judge said that the trial could go ahead in his absence, which it did, and we were very pleased with that.
But it is obviously, among all the other feelings you're experiencing, the most overwhelmingly frustrating feeling to know that he's still not there and he's not serving his sentence, and also that people must know where he is.
Well, and I'll take this opportunity to make an appeal. I would ask anybody who knows of Jack Shepherd, his friends, his family, or anyone who sees him, to examine their conscience and their loyalties, and to get in touch with the police or Crime Stoppers. There is a national paper has made a reward for his return to justice, and it's the right thing. It's actually, I was listening to Jeremy Vine's show on Friday, and he said something which resonated with me. He said, "I don't know what it's like to be a fugitive. It doesn't sound much fun to me." Well, that's what Jack Shepherd is. He is a fugitive. He is looking over his shoulder. So I just hope that Jack gets this message and does the honourable thing and turns himself into the police.
I mean, we know there's an international manhunt for him. Do you have any cause to believe he's in this country, or do you have any indication he might be abroad, or do you just not know?
We don't really know, but there was indication that was said yesterday through Chris, the detective sergeant who's dealing. There is a trial that he did go abroad.
There's a thought that he might be abroad.
Earlier on this year, but we don't know.
One of the things you said when you first sat down here was, you want there to be some legacy. You want there to be some change made.
Well, this is absolutely where the last 2.5 years, this is when we found out there is no legislation. We were, as a family, totally shocked that anyone can speed. They don't have to wear life jackets. They can drink alcohol, excess alcohol. There's no safety training. There's no MOT type. There's no insurance.
Because I keep thinking, I just described the boat, poor and sloppy steering, a partially opaque windscreen. If you were getting into a car like that, you'd sort of know it, wouldn't you? It would look like an old banger. You'd see, wouldn't you?
I think it's important to make the distinction between commercial and private.
Yes.
The laws all exist there for commercial, but not for private boat users. And after Marchioness, a lot of laws did come in, but they forgot to add the private aspect to it. We were shocked. You don't need insurance. You don't need a license. The basic requirements which you need in a car just do not exist for a speedboat. And it's just truly shocking for us when we found this out, which is partly why it took 2.5 years to get it to court, and why the charge of manslaughter with gross negligence had to be used, because there was no effective legislation to cover this incident.
Isn't it extraordinary? There was no precedent for this. They didn't know how to even apply the law to it, insofar as the law existed. My goodness.
So my appeal is to start campaigning with the support of the RNLI, which I've already got. I've had a relationship with them in the last 2 years, and to start campaigning for this legislation. So I'm appealing to anyone that would like to help. I'm appealing to MPs, anyone who will care to assist us with this, because, perfectly honest, I'm not going to let it drop. I'm in for the long haul.
No, I understand why. I think absolutely anyone with a daughter can understand, and any woman really can understand, and maybe some men too, that the allure of a nighttime boat ride very fast on the Thames would be something that you wouldn't be able to resist, but you'd believe somehow that all that legislation was already in place. You wouldn't think that you were taking your life in your hands, would you?
She wouldn't have known. She'd never been on a speedboat. She would just definitely would not have known that it had gone 0 to, as what Graham said, 0 to 30 knots in 6 seconds. She would never have known that was going to happen. And also, we don't, as we said before, we just don't know if she was driving, if she wasn't driving. There's no evidence of anything. They think it might have been a log, but we don't know. We don't know anything really for factual.
And do you feel that if Jack Shepherd were to be found and were to be brought to book and in the dock, that he would give a believable, reliable testimony?
Definitely not.
It doesn't strike me that he's that kind of person, does it?
He wouldn't, no.
Which leaves us feeling slightly cheated from the fact that he didn't attend his trial. Part of the healing process is knowing what happened. And we'll never know for sure because he was absent, which is quite distressing.
Yes.
But, it all comes back to the central point. There was a number of aggravating factors to this gross negligence. He took her out on the night, in the middle of winter, didn't offer her a life jacket, was speeding in a faulty boat. Apparently they were doing, I never heard this term before, so forgive me, but they were doing donuts, doing figure of eights and speeding and...
Well, he was just showing off, wasn't he? Just showing off, it sounds like.
Absolutely showing off. And unfortunately, our beautiful daughter, we've lost her because of this reckless, negligent, careless, thoughtless man.
I mean, it's utterly, utterly heartbreaking just to hear you tell this story and have to tell it over and over and grapple with it again and again. But I'm conscious that on the radio, on the television, the newspaper, you hear about people who've lost children, and it's somehow you hear about it so often it becomes another story. But for you, it's not a story. For your family, it's not a story. This is your life. This is your life, and I can feel the sort of void and the chasm where she used to be. It's just it's unbearably hard for you.
It was immensely heartbreaking, and for me, as a mum,
yes,
I'm going to grieve a lifetime, and there's no moving on for me. There's no getting over it. I simply won't.
I don't see how you could.
No, definitely not.
I really don't. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming in and telling us about it. I can see how much you wish that this level of suffering would never happen to another family. And if anybody does know where Jack Shepherd is, let's hope they contact us here on the BBC. The number's 08000 288 291. Thank you so much. And,
thank you.
Thank you.
And all I can do is just wish you well. Godspeed. I don't know what else to say, really.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And on the phone, there's Mike in Barnstaple. Hello, Mike. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vanessa. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. And it was extremely moving and upsetting, wasn't it, to hear that mum and dad talking about Charlotte?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I'd just like to say I'd offer my sincere condolences to the parents of that poor young girl. But
yes.
I was just saying to your researcher there about, we lived in Australia for a little while a few years ago, and the boat laws over there are far different to this country. In that you are restricted on what speed you can travel at on the water for a start. And if you wanted to go, I think, if memory serves, if it was over 10 knots, then you had to take a test. And while I was working over there, because part of my job was as a marine engineer, I had to obviously test drive boats after their repairs and etc. And so I had to go and take effectively a boat test, to enable me to be safe on the water. I knew what I was doing and all this sort of thing. And it just amazes me why they don't have a similar thing in this country.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you had to have the whole panoply of kit there, didn't you? The life jackets, the torches.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the river police were very prominent. They were constantly sort of surveying the waters up and down. And if they saw a group of lads in a boat, sort of acting like hooligans, and they would very promptly pull them over, and if they didn't have the relevant kit on board, then they'll be towed back to shore.
Yes, well, it seems to be an anomaly that Charlotte's parents really do hope. Moonlight Shadow, coming up after the news. We're looking for calls from you, all those of us who've squandered all those hours on Love Island. You tell us what we should and could have been doing instead, all those magical, wondrous and splendid experiences that we missed. What should we have been doing? 08000 288 291. This is BBC Radio 2. Online, on digital radio, and on 88 to 91 FM.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Tom Harrigan. A former British soldier who fought against the Islamic State group in Syria has had terror charges against him dropped. The suicide bomber who attacked the Manchester Arena last year had previously been rescued from Libya by the Royal Navy. And the ocean racer Tony Bullimore, who famously survived for 4 days after his yacht capsized, has died. A former British soldier who was due to go on trial accused of attending terrorist training camps has had the charges against him dropped. Jim Matthews, who's 43 and from East London, had travelled to Syria to join Kurdish militia fighting against the Islamic State group. He's believed to have been the first person in Britain to be charged for assisting a group already helped by the UK government. Tom Burridge reports from the Old Bailey.
Jim Matthews has never denied that he fought for the Kurdish YPG forces in Syria against the so-called Islamic State. But earlier this year, the Metropolitan Police charged him with allegedly attending terrorist training camps in Syria and Iraq. Today, it was claimed that new, undisclosed evidence had come to light, and the case against Mr. Matthews suddenly collapsed. Mr. Matthews accused the government of making a politically calculated decision to bring charges against him. He asked whether relations with and arms sales to Turkey, which deems the YPG to be a terrorist group, was the real reason he was prosecuted.
It's emerged that the man who bombed the Manchester Arena last year was rescued from the civil war in Libya by the Royal Navy. Salman Abedi and more than 100 other British nationals boarded the survey ship HMS Enterprise in Tripoli in 2014. 22 people were killed when Abedi detonated a homemade suicide vest at the end of an Ariana Grande concert last year. Senior managers at Royal Bank of Scotland won't face any action over the way a controversial unit treated small firms. RBS's Global Restructuring Group has been accused of harming struggling companies by imposing higher fees and interest rates. Simon Gompertz reports.
Businesses which fell into the hands of RBS's now notorious GRG unit during the financial crisis might have hoped that they had the same consumer protection as if they were individual bank customers. But they were wrong. The Financial Conduct Authority says it didn't regulate business lending. So even though its own investigations show RBS had a conflict of interest between helping troubled firms and making money out of them, and didn't recognise the emotional stress on customers who lost their livelihoods and their homes, it doesn't have the power to impose financial penalties on the bank or its managers. The FCA can ban individuals from financial work, but it believes it wouldn't succeed in proving that they were dishonest or incompetent.
The President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews has called on Labour to expel an ally of Jeremy Corbyn who condemned some members of the Jewish community as Trump fanatics. Marie van der Zyl described Peter Wilsman's comments as a disgusting rant. It's understood that he has since apologised. An investigation by the BBC's Victoria Derbyshire programme has found that women in England are illegally taking abortion pills at home after buying them over the internet. Scotland and Wales allow women to use the pills at home, but in England they must be taken at a hospital or clinic. The Labour backbencher Diana Johnson is one of 50 MPs who've written to the Health Secretary Matt Hancock, urging him to change the rules.
English women are not being afforded the same dignity, the same woman-centred healthcare that we all want to see for these women, and we want him to do something about it. So I'm hopeful. I raised it with him personally at the Health Select Committee where he appeared before us just last week, and I think he understands this is an issue he needs to address.
More than 150 Ryanair flights serving Stansted airports have been cancelled or delayed due to thunderstorms in the southeast of England earlier. Passengers have reported long queues, a lack of information, and sitting on planes that haven't moved for several hours. The airport is advising people to check the status of their flight before travelling. The former round-the-world sailor Tony Bullimore has died at the age of 79. He was at the centre of a famous rescue more than 20 years ago after his yacht capsized during a race. Here's John Kay.
It was January 1997 when Tony Bullimore made international headlines. He was taking part in the Vendée Globe round-the-world solo yacht race when his boat capsized in the Antarctic Ocean more than 1,000 miles from Australia. Many feared the worst, but he found an air pocket in the upturned hull and after 4 days was rescued by a passing Australian Royal Naval ship. The Queen praised Tony Bullimore's extraordinary feat of survival. He said it was down to chocolate, water and sheer determination.
In the city a short time ago, the 100 share index was up 51 points at 7,752. And the weather forecast, much of England and Wales staying dry this afternoon with warm sunny spells. Cloud and rain arriving across Northern Ireland and Scotland later on though. Top temperatures of 23 Celsius in London, 21 in Cardiff, 18 in Belfast and 17 in Edinburgh. That's the BBC News at 1:05.
Welcome back. Vanessa sitting in for Jeremy. Coming up, the woman who quit the Jehovah's Witnesses. What happened to her next? That's after Cher and Fernando. Is Cher making Fernando her own? It's a bit of a long wait to see her in the film, but it is well worth it. For many of us, our interactions with Jehovah's Witnesses will come on the street or the doorstep as followers give out leaflets and magazines trying to recruit new members to their faith. But our next guest was a member of that faith for almost 20 years. However, she decided to leave and was shunned by members of her own family who remain Jehovah's Witnesses. There are more than 100,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in the UK. They believe humanity is in its last days and that the final battle between good and evil will happen soon. They claim that 144,000 faithful Christians will go to heaven. The official website of Jehovah's Witnesses states that members who choose to stop following the religion are not shunned, but those who break the Bible's code could be shunned or disfellowshipped. It claims family members who remain Jehovah's Witnesses can maintain normal, affectionate relationships with their loved ones, even if they're no longer part of the church. Well, maybe you were a Jehovah's Witness. If you were, have you seen people being shunned after leaving the church? You could give us a call on 08000 288 291. And we're asking this today because one of our listeners got in touch with us to tell us how she's been shunned by her son and his family after she stopped believing. We're going to call her Ruby, but it's not her real name, and she's on the line in our studio in Liverpool. Ruby, hello, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Vanessa.
How long were you a Jehovah's Witness?
From 1975 to 1993.
And what was it that attracted you to the faith in the first place?
Well, I had two little girls who were coming up to the communion, and I wanted to read them Bible stories, and two ladies called the Book of Bible Stories, which was perfect, what I was looking for. And at the time I was in a very bad marriage, and the Catholic Church was getting bad press. So I was delighted with this little book, and I read it to the girls, to my three children, and the two ladies came back the next week, and they came back every week asking me if I had questions, and of course I had questions because I said, well, there are mistakes in the book. So that was how they started a study with me.
And so by this time that you're finding them very sympathetic and empathetic and providing you with the stories you wanted to tell your children. And you become sort of more and more, I suppose you could say, enmeshed in the faith and the religion.
Yes, yeah. When I went to the hall, they greeted me with love. They love-bombed me. They told me they were one big happy family, no matter where one went in the world. They'd take you into their home and treat you as family, and they're there to help the widows and orphans. And anyway, when I got divorced and I asked them for help, they said, oh no, your ex-husband should do it.
Oh really?
My ex-husband didn't do it when he was with me. He's not going to do it now that we're divorced.
But you didn't leave the church when they said, no, we can't help you.
No, I didn't. No, I thought, well, and they said, well, you're a divorced woman. Us two brothers can't go into your house, you know. So I said, no, I'll give you the key, and I'll go out. I'll go to my friend's house. Oh no, they wouldn't have it.
Meanwhile, you became baptised into the Jehovah's Witnesses in March 1975, and you had been told that in 1975 Armageddon was coming. It was going to be the end of our days as we know them. And then, of course, that's not what happened. And you did question, you did ask about it.
Yes, Armageddon was supposed to come in the autumn of 75. There was a special talk given that was around the 1st of October, and of course it didn't come. And then there was a talk given that it's like waiting for a person off a train. If they're not on that train, they could be on the next train. So you keep waiting, and nobody knows the day or the hour, we're told. But Armageddon didn't come in 75 or 76. And I got divorced, moved house. This was 1980, and then I got a job in the British American Tobacco Company because I had a mortgage to pay and I had 3 children to feed.
Yes.
That was disapproved of. There was a public special needs talk given saying, does Jehovah approve of our work? Do we work in munitions? Or do we work in drugs or tobacco or the like? And that was directed at me. And I felt very marginalised.
And you say that, you felt that they really disapproved of you working at all, and that actually they were monopolising more and more of your time. There were more and more meetings and meetings. And you say that you looked around at meetings and you'd see lots of children there, and you would be thinking, but why aren't they in bed, or why aren't they doing their homework? And so you didn't include your children in the same way that other people did.
No, because children would be out till 10 o'clock at night at meetings, sleeping under the chairs. And then they've got to get up for school in the morning. Well, I felt that I was wrong. And I lived quite a distance from the hall. And in the dark nights, I felt unsafe getting home.
So 18 years along your affiliation with the church, you finally decided to leave. It must have been something major to make you break that kind of connection.
Yes, because I was a single woman, single sister. I had no friends, but then I made friends with another single sister and we used to socialise together. Now, single sisters aren't supposed to enjoy life. We're supposed to sit at home studying the Watchtower. Well, we used to go out, go for meals, go to the theatre. I'd go for a drink, so just go out generally and have a good time. Just enjoy it. We were enjoying life. Anyway, my ex-husband got married again and he married a witness lady, and I felt upset over that. That he was the one that he was a bad husband. He didn't look after me or the children. Yet he was accepted, and there was me getting marginalised, and my work and everything was being condemned.
And were you told off for going out and having a drink and having a meal and having fun?
No, they didn't know. Nobody. No, we're not supposed to do it. No, none of the brothers knew about it. But anyway, this sister and I, we had a disagreement over something, and we fell out, so we weren't sitting together in the hall, and the brothers noticed this, and they took us into the back room. And when you get taken into the back room, it's like being taken to the headmaster's office. Everyone knows you've been up to no good.
Yes.
Well, the sister said that I was upset because my ex-husband got married again. Well, that wasn't the real reason why we fell out. And they started to grill me. What's happened? What's wrong? Ruby, what's wrong? So I wouldn't say a word to them. I sat there in silence, and they kept us there for over an hour. And these 3 brothers that I loved and respected, I saw them change from 3 loving men into 3 demons.
Why do you call them demons? What did they do?
They became like demons. They were so angry because I wouldn't speak. I had the upper hand of them.
And then you decided enough was enough, and you
enough is enough.
left.
Yes, I thought there's no love here. It's the very same as the Catholic Church. They profess to have love, profess to have the truth, but no. Then they opened the door and it was pitch black outside, and not one of them said, "Are you okay getting home, Ruby? Shall we get a taxi for you?" No, I could have been raped or murdered that night.
And they didn't seem to care as far as you could see.
No, they didn't seem to care.
Meanwhile, your son, one of your sons, had become one of the church elders. And there you are. You've walked out. You've said, right, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. And you never did go back. He is very much a part of that faith and a part of the church, isn't he? And you did at first see him after you left. But since then, the whole thing has just really fallen apart, your relationship. What do you think's happened?
Well, when he got married, he and his wife, they had a study, and he was made an elder very quickly. Then I met my present partner in August 2011, and introduced him to my family, and immediately the shunning started.
When you say the shunning, is that a verb, the word to shun, that they use in the Jehovah's Witnesses? Because you don't hear an awful lot of shunning going on in the rest of the world, do you? People don't talk about shunning one another.
No,
but this is a known thing, is it, to shun?
It is, but they deny it. They deny it. They say they use the scriptures, but Jesus never said to shun anyone. It comes from the organisation.
And what was it like to be shunned by your own son?
It's terrible. I went round and said to him, I said, all I'm asking you is to check it out. Check out what you believe is true, you know? I said, because I checked it out on the internet. When the Ebola crisis broke out, I thought that was Armageddon, because there were thousands of people dying every day. And I thought, if this comes into Britain, this is Armageddon, you know? So then I checked it. We're not supposed to check anything out on the internet, and I was scared in case I get hit by a bolt of lightning from heaven.
Yes.
But I was shocked at what I found. I read about money laundering,
yes,
shunning, paedophilia.
I mean, I've got a message here. We asked the Jehovah's Witnesses about this, and this is what they say. Those who were baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses but no longer preach to others, perhaps even drifting away from association with fellow believers, are not shunned. In fact, we reach out to them and try to rekindle their spiritual interest.
No, that is not true. Nobody's ever called to me since I left in 1993. No shepherd has ever come out to bring this little lost sheep back.
They also say they don't automatically disfellowship someone who commits a serious sin, and disfellowshipped individuals may attend our religious services if they wish.
Well, I wasn't disfellowshipped. I just stopped going. But my son is shunning me, and my daughter-in-law called me a fornicator. I said, why can't I see my grandchildren? And she says, no, I don't want them mixing with fornicators. And my partner and I were married. So,
Are you the only person you know who has been shunned after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, there are thousands.
But do you know them? Have you ever met them or spoken to them? Are you sure about this?
Yes, I'm in touch with them on Facebook, on the internet.
And what are the sorts of things they tell you?
That how heartbreaking it is. Family members can die. They won't be told. My grandson got married. I was the only person not invited to the wedding. Babies are born, they never see the baby. Grandparents never see the grandchildren. It's happening all over the world.
And do you feel that if you made overtures to the elders or to the people that you used to know within the Jehovah's Witnesses, if you said, I am shunned and I can't see my son and I wasn't invited to my grandchild's wedding, would they speak to you? Would they entertain an audience with you? No.
No, they wouldn't. No, they just clam up. Yeah,
would they invite you in, or would they leave you on the doorstep? What do you think?
They'd leave me on. No, I went round to see my son. He asked me to leave. He said, "Mother, you're making us feel uncomfortable. You've got to go." Didn't even offer me a cup of tea.
Really? And you say that the people are in this similar situation all over the world?
Yes. Many people commit suicide because of it, because there's nothing left in life. Your children and your grandchildren are your life.
I'm so sorry for this, and you don't feel that if you went literally and knocked on the door of the church and you said, you were in my living room, you were telling me you would care for me, and now because I don't have faith anymore, and it's not my fault, I didn't mean to lose the faith.
Yes, they deny what they said. They deny that they ever said that 1975 was the year Armageddon would come. And I've got books. They were told to get rid of all the books, get rid of the evidence. I've still got them books. Yes.
And so what are your feelings when you see, we see, I live and work right in the centre of London, and we see people giving out the Watchtower all the time. They're always wearing, very smart suits and very nice frocks, and they hand out with a big, big smile. And what are your thoughts about these people who do that?
The witnesses themselves, they're very good people. They live by the Bible, and they do not know what's going on in the organisation. Because they're told not to check it out. They're told, you have the truth, no need to check it out.
Ruby, thank you very much indeed for talking to us, even though you've told us a very sad story indeed. And I wish you well, and I hope that in the future maybe you will repair your relationship with your son. And lovely listener, we're taking your calls on this. If you used to be a Jehovah's Witness, if you're experiencing what Ruby is going through now, a shunning, then you could give us a call. And if you're not, you could equally well ring in and say, no, well, that's not what's happened to me at all. The number 08000 288 291, or you can email vine@bbc.co.uk. me a river. James in Peterborough says, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. I left about 12 years ago. The elders felt that I didn't respect their authority, and although I wasn't shunned, I haven't spoken to my mother in about 8 years because of it. In my opinion, it is a cult, and there is a lot of thought control involved. Louise from Cambridge says, my friend was shunned by her own family and the Jehovah's Witnesses after she got pregnant by someone who was not in the religion. Her children have grown up without their grandparents, aunts, uncles and cousins, and she's had to navigate motherhood all by herself. She's doing amazingly. Good riddance. Ray, not his real name, says, I am a Jehovah's Witness. The shunning process is very common. I have seen it firsthand. To leave the faith is called to disassociate oneself. There will then follow a short announcement to the congregation, and this is a warning sign to all to have nothing further to do with the person. And that's from somebody who is a Jehovah's Witness now. Adrian in Swindon says, my family and I were Jehovah's Witnesses for 5 years until we fell out with the elders. As a religion, it taught me to be less selfish, and ultimately it did save my marriage. There was no bad blood when we left the religion. Cases of shunning must be for different personal reasons. It is not something they encourage. And Catherine in Brighton says, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I left at 17 as it was awful. My father was an elder and my mother was very abusive to me. I went to the church. I told them what my mum did to me. They weren't interested and ignored me. When I left the organisation, they accused me of all sorts of things, such as having sex before marriage and Satan worship.
Whether you're hard at work, indulging in some light insomnia, or tiptoeing in after a night out, I am live and at your service from midnight.
OJ Borge.
If I get a song stuck in my head, I just play it over and over and over and over and over and over again until I hate it. My doctor's has got the worst hold music. I tend to end up on hold there, and I will hang up going, I'm not ill enough to wait through this.
Hello?
My wife, well, she sent me this text going, I bet you've not had to tend to a dog's sunburnt bottom today, have you? The answer was, of course, no.
OJ Borge. Weeknights from midnight.
Making being awake a good thing.
Radio 2. And Keith's on the line in Newcastle. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you doing?
I'm fine. You were a Jehovah's Witness for 50 years, but you did leave.
50, yes. I was I was missionary over in Spain, acting elder, ministerial servant, pioneer, give talks at large assemblies, conventions, the lot.
I want to know what made you leave.
Well, would you believe it, Vanessa? This is really strange. It was the Jeremy Vine show.
No, I'm amazed.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes.
Why?
What happened? Jeremy was doing an interview with a witness who mentioned that the Jehovah's Witnesses were within the United Nations and were thrown out of it. And I thought, no. So I went online to the United Nations, checked it out, and very clearly they were part of the United Nations from 1991 to October 2001 when they were disassociated. Bearing in mind that the Watchtower organisation said that the United Nations are going to be destroyed because they're a wild beast, and I just could not believe it.
And that was it for you after 50 years.
Yeah,
wow.
50 years. And then I checked the teachings that they had, that my eyes were open then, and I found that nearly 50% of the teachings were made up.
Gosh.
It couldn't be verified by the Bible.
And here's the key thing. Were you shunned when you left?
Yes, big style.
Oh,
I have a YouTube channel under my name, Keith McAllister. If anyone wants to see Jehovah's Witnesses shunning someone, it was in Newcastle City Centre a couple of weeks ago, and it's on video.
Why? What happened?
I went up to them to discuss a scripture, and they told me to go away. Now, with this bearing in mind, the chap I spoke to, I've known him for 25 years. Refused to talk to me, go away, and then sent the other girl that was with them, sent her away.
And like
I was completely shunned.
And like Ruby, Keith, we spoke to Ruby and she said she was the only person in the entire family not invited to her son's wedding, and you had a similar thing when your daughter got married.
Yes, I didn't even know till 2 years ago that she actually got married.
And you're being shunned actively even now.
Yes.
But
Plus also 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
Yes.
Because there's 8 of us. Yeah. They're all shunning me, won't talk to me, won't answer emails, texts, anything.
Do you still feel you did the right thing in leaving?
Oh, definitely, because it is a cult. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It is a cult.
Keith, thank you very much. Let me go to Jim. Jim's in North Wales. Hello, Jim. You were disfellowshipped from the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Do you want to tell us why?
No. All I can say is that it's a beautiful religion.
Yeah.
The people there are imperfect. They're just trying their best.
Right.
Nobody forced me into a baptism pool by gunpoint. I wanted it. But years later, I was in a bad marriage and I wanted out and I broke the rules and I paid the full recompense for my error.
And what is the full recompense?
Being disfellowshipped, and it's hurt me. but discipline's supposed to hurt. I'd like to say this, Vanessa.
Yes.
Say you wanted to join the army to be part of something bigger and better.
Yeah.
You wouldn't take your teddy bear and cry about missing your mum, would you?
No.
So I want to be part of something that's pure, it's clean, it's wonderful. I believe the earthly paradise is coming. I'm trying to get back in. Sometimes, because we're surrounded by imperfect people, and because sometimes the elders don't understand you,
Yeah.
Your feelings are going to get trampled on. You're going to get hurt. But that's just part of life. Whatever sphere of life you're in, it's going to happen.
What about, Jim, though, the element of religion which is supposed to be about compassion and forgiveness, understanding, empathy, those things?
There is a lot of that there. But if you get an elder who's under a lot of pressure on a bad day, he can say the wrong thing to you. That doesn't make him a bad person. That makes him a guy under pressure who's doing his best. What I would say was, I'm not going to sort of like get into like individual stuff about what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But one of the things is, you've got to put God first before your family, and I really believe that, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever seen Jeremy Kyle?
Yes.
And how families treat each other?
Yes.
It's terrible. We're living in a world where people are horrible to each other, and they're like husbands and wives and children and parents.
I know, but this word shunning, to shun a member of your own family because of his or her
But it's only
beliefs.
for a limited time until you come to your senses.
Except we've heard of people that it's been going on for years and years.
But you see, okay, fine. If you accept a set of beliefs, right?
Yes.
And you accept it as the truth and you let it into your heart, and then years later you turn aside from it, right?
Yeah.
You have just trampled on all the beliefs of the people who are surrounding you. You've trampled on all their beliefs that they believe with their heart and they love.
And so you would really like to get back in, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, then I wish you lots of luck with it, and I hope that you succeed and that you find happiness. And thank you very much indeed for ringing. We appreciate it. The Chainsmokers and Emily Warren and Side Effects. I've just been saying to Bobby, did you watch Love Island?
I haven't caught up with Love Island. I kind of know what's happened, but I'm going to save it. See, sometimes you need cartoons in your life and Scooby-Doo, don't you, to chill out. And I think, whatever makes you laugh and chillax, as the kids say, is great.
I think maybe that's the impact of it. It's just so undemanding in exactly the same way as a Scooby snack. Well, it's time for the travel.
Thank you, Vanessa. First of all, away from Grimsby, A180 on the westbound side, closed for investigation work following last night's accident. So it's closed still between the A160, the Brocklesby interchange and the Barnetby Top interchange. So the diversion, which includes the A1. M6 heading south, 3A to 3 down towards Nuneaton. Got a breakdown, one lane is shut. A5 at Hinckley, partially blocked at the M69. Now on the roundabout underneath the M69, that's where the accident is at junction 1. So take care as you go off. It's going to cause some congestion on all routes there. The M25, clockwise a little bit busy between the M4 and the M40, 15 to 16. We've got 2 lanes blocked because of a vehicle fire, as well on the QE2 bridge. So if you're clockwise, you've got some slow traffic. It was already slow there anyway. Anti-clockwise, 16, the M40 to 13 Staines is heavy and a little bit slow through Chertsey as well at junction 11. The M4 eastbound 13 for Newbury. We've got a breakdown. One lane is shut. Bristol M4 eastbound at 19 on the exit Slit Road. You can get past it, but there's an accident, so as you go off to Bristol, take care. And the Avonmouth Bridge, the M5 on the northbound side, there's a breakdown 19 to 18, so take care through there. And Stroud, the A46, Beaches Green, that stretch of the A46 was completely blocked by a breakdown at the A4171, which is the Stratford Road. It is open, but only small vehicles are getting through, so it looks like buses are struggling and larger lorries. To Barnstaple, the A39 North Road is still closed. Accident at the Pilton Quay, so just delays on surrounding routes. Heathrow Express, this is just in London Paddington, Heathrow Terminal 5. There are signalling problems. Now, it looks like services are at a stand, so check before you travel. Eurotunnel in Folkestone, passenger service, delays of 30 minutes if you head down there. And if you are heading out on South Western Railway, there is strike action today. Trains are running, but there are restrictions. Back with another one for you with Steve in about an hour.
Thank you very much indeed, Bobby. In a minute, you're going to tell us all the scintillating and riveting things that we should have got up to instead of wasting all those hours watching Love Island.
I hope she don't have a go at me for telling this story. I get a call and it's my mum. She goes, "Oh no, you're never going to believe what's happened." I said, "What?"
New to Radio 2.
She went, "Well, I was in the garden because the weather's nice, and I've gone and sat in the deck chair and I fell straight through it. So my mum is just rolling around the garden in a deck chair."
Rylan Clark Neil.
This is Zoe's show. I'm just standing in, having a nice little Saturday afternoon. So many of you getting in touch. "Hi, Rylan. My poor husband has had a bad reputation with folding chairs. He sat on his chair and it promptly folded back up with him inside. But we were all laughing so much, we were unable to help him."
Rylan Clark Neil.
Listen, this deck chair epidemic is like national.
Saturday afternoon from 3.
On BBC Radio 2. My mum is all right, by the way.
Last night, it kind of escaped your notice, was the final of Love Island. You may well have been one of the 4 million people watching it, but perhaps you were one of the tens of millions who did not watch it. And if you didn't, do give us a call and tell us what sad people like me should have been doing instead. If you're someone whose life has been taken over by the antics of the beautiful contestants, you'll probably remember their take on Brexit.
What do you think about Brexit?
What's that? Like,
Where we're leaving the European Union.
I seriously don't have a
So,
clue.
like, it was to leave the EU, so we wouldn't be part of
the
Europe,
EU,
which
yeah,
would
yeah,
mean like
definitely.
welfare and like things we trade with would be cut down.
So does that mean we won't have any trees?
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 Oh no, that's got nothing to do with it, babe. That's weather.
Wouldn't we have trees? What are you talking
No,
about?
we're just not in the European Union. We're still classed as like being in Europe.
Doesn't it mean it would be harder to like go to like Spain and stuff?
So it'll be harder to go on holidays?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I love my holidays.
Yeah.
It's really impossible to forget Georgia's catchphrase.
At the end of the day, I was in a situation, I'm very, very loyal, so I've got to follow that through. With Jack, you're very, very loyal.
And who could forget that moment when Dr. Alex dumped Alexandra?
I can tell you I haven't been lying. I've been honest about my feelings the whole time.
You have not been honest.
I spoke to you on the
There was a
steps.
doubt. There was a doubt in your mind when the new girls came in that you wanted to get to know other people. My head did not turn until you told me that you wanted to get to know other people. You know if you like somebody or not. I think you're pathetic. I think you're absolutely pathetic. You've wasted my time and you've wasted your own. Shame on you.
Go on, Alexandra. She was spot on there. Spot on. Maybe you can give a bit of advice to those who've been left feeling bereft, including me, now that the show has ended. What could we have achieved in those 58... I can't believe it's 58 hours watching that program. Oh, my gosh. If we hadn't been wasting it in front of trash TV, give us a call on 08000 288 291 or email vine@bbc.co.uk. Joining me in the studio, delighted to welcome Nikki Hodgson, the author of A Curious History of Dating and absolutely rabid Love Island fan, and Richard Fitzwilliams, a film critic in the blissful position of never having seen a single episode of Love Island.
Second, Vanessa.
Not a single second.
Not a scintilla of a second.
Oh my gosh, as I had to tell our editor Phil, I could just hear my father every single night as I kept watching saying, "For this you went to Cambridge? For this? When you're watching this? Why are you doing it?" And Nikki, maybe you'll tell me why I was and why 4 million other people were. Why did we watch it?
I'm going to sanctify your viewing, Vanessa.
Please do.
So the thing about Love Island is that in this country in general, we have very poor emotional literacy. We're not very good talking about our feelings or about relationships. And what Love Island allowed a lot of people to do was explore issues around things like gaslighting, dating after sex work, how you end a relationship with someone humanely.
What do you mean by gaslighting? What is
so
that?
Gaslighting is when usually a man, but not always, denies that they've lured you into a certain kind of conversation or revealed emotions to you. So the situation specifically on Love Island was between Adam and Rosie, where she got really mad at him that he'd basically dumped her, and he just sat there smirking the whole time and tried to play down the fact that he'd ever had any kind of emotional connection with her. Now that's a form of emotional abuse, and that was brought up as an issue, and lots of people were very quick to jump on social media and discuss it with each other. And what has been so important about this show is that it's really engaged, especially younger people, in talking about feelings and what kind of behaviour is okay.
You make it sound very, very serious. You make it sound as if we all plugged into it in order to be given given a good old lesson in emotional literacy.
but we
That's
did
not
it.
how I felt, I don't think, while I was watching it anyway.
But that's what's so great about the programme. You can watch it and have loads of fun, watch it, you know, you're kind of championing your favourite character and all the rest of it. But at the same time, there are serious issues being explored, but it's not done in a heavy-handed way, which is the perfect way to teach someone about how to have a good relationship.
But you see, some people will say none of the issues are real at all. It's superficial. It's a telly setup. They're people who've been chosen because they look a certain way. They all look exactly the same, you know, like Barbie and Ken, pretty much. And none of it's real. You can't learn anything worth learning from something like that. It's a form of the most extraordinary kind of escapism.
It is.
No, because, you know, you'd have to be a grade A sociopath to keep up the act for 8 weeks of pretending that you were into someone or not. You know, if you put people in that environment, we've seen it with Big Brother for decades now, people do have genuine emotional interactions with each other. Feelings come up, they're humans, they're empathic, they're going to show you some element of their character. Maybe you're not going to see all of it because of the way the editors edit the show, but you are going to get a sense of what drives people.
All right, Richard Fitzwilliams, why haven't you been watching it? The way Nikki sells it, you know, think of all the things you could have learned about emotional literacy.
Well, I'm thinking about the things I've been doing instead of watching this inverted pyramid of Peffel and the things other people could be doing
Was there
instead
really
of
anything else
wasting
to
time
do?
with this trash. And if you want one example of it being trash, you just look at that conversation on Brexit. I mean, conversation in inverted commas. Call it gaslighting if you like or whatever. The whole thing is like a complete vacuum.
But Richard,
it's a total waste of time. May I just point out some of the things that could happen in London? For example, we have the world's finest theatre. Instead of watching these pseudo-emotions in some clapped-out whatever which is edited, and I speak on behalf of the 56 million people who didn't waste those hours, why not, for example, see the most recent Royal Shakespeare Company, Julius Caesar, Hamilton,
Well,
or
maybe
Harry
people
Potter?
did both. You don't have to do one or the other, do you? You can do both. And also,
you
lots of
most
people don't live in
emphatically
London.
do.
Lots of people don't have the money to travel to London or go to the theatre. This is what they have. That's the beauty of TV. Aren't you a film critic, by the way? Aren't you a film critic? In the 1930s, what was the most popular thing for people to do? It was to go to the cinema, and it was to kiss and cuddle in the dark, because that's one of the only places they could do it, and watch these grand romantic passions play out on the screen, and then apply it to their own life. It's not any different.
Pretty pathetic to kiss and cuddle in your living room when you're watching synthetic creatures moving around. No, but I mean, what I'm trying to explain is what you could be doing. Look at the summer of sport we have. They're in the World Cup, for example.
Oh, and that wasn't a waste of time. So watching grown men kick footballs around wasn't a waste of time.
Which give you a fortnight's pleasure. Royal Ascot.
I watched that as well, and I got lots of pleasure at Wimbledon.
And
but the point is, Richard, I've written the point is what you
I've
could written a book on the history of dating, and the future of dating is what I'm working on next. And I needed to watch Love Island to be able to see what is being shown to the public.
I'll tell you,
people are
Richard,
engaging with
let
to
me ask you
understand the
something that
mentality.
I felt that I needed to watch. I'm not, I mean, it's a bit of, I'm slightly pretending because obviously I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it.
Exhibition?
But I felt I needed to watch it so that I could discuss it with everyone else who was watching it, because otherwise you were culturally isolated.
So the only reason for watching it was to say that you had, because lots of other people were, said that if you didn't feel left out, why not go to an exhibition at the Royal Academy? Why not Frida Kahlo, a famous artist, the Victorian Albert?
Why not do all of it, Richard?
You can't do all of it, but you're wasting 56 hours doing, quite frankly, I mean, the way you had a lot of fun with it, fair enough, but to read deep meanings into a load of...
No, but this is a mistake you make. I get very annoyed when people write off programmes about relationships as trivial or women's issues or things that don't add.
Look at that conversation on Brexit. Isn't that the most
That was vital.
It was vital to show what
it was vital to show that people in this country don't understand Brexit. That was vital to explain that lots of young people do not understand what is going on.
It's perfectly obvious. And if you're going to, in fact, what about films? How about films? Mission Impossible, Mamma Mia, Solo, A Star Wars
I haven't watched any of them. They don't interest me.
Well, no.
Let me fling something into the mix here. Let me fling something into the mix. What about the notion that Love Island can be, isn't always, obviously, but can be the breeding ground for true and enduring love? I mean, I've got a list here. Lewis and Callie, parents to the first ever Love Island baby, are still together. They're from Series 1. Cara and Nathan, winners of Series 2, expecting a baby. They split up, but now they're engaged. Alex and Olivia, Series 2, engaged, getting married this year. Dom and Jet, I mean, I could go on and on. I've got a whole list of them here.
A better success rate than Tinder.
The other thing, of course, is they end up making a most colossal amount of money. A
colossal amount of money, but also a colossal amount of time. You're dealing with 56 hours, which I suggest
you were
if
happy
go
to
to a
watch Wimbledon.
concert-
Okay, so how many hours was Wimbledon plus the football, which you watched?
Wimbledon probably would be me about half a dozen hours, 6, 7 hours, something
Okay,
like
so
that.
you restricted your viewing. You could easily have sat and watched it for longer, like some people would have done.
If you
do
had
you
the
consider
time,
that a
but
waste
I mean,
of time?
yes, because some of us have work, of course.
Well,
but
yeah,
equally
some of us
with-
do have work,
No,
and
no,
for
but
some of
with-
us,
I reckon
Love
this is
Island
a,
has
this is,
hours.
this
If
is
you
a shouting
consider
match
in-
that could go on for hours, maybe 57 or 58 hours of this, and we'd all thoroughly enjoy it. But I'm going to say thank you very much indeed to Nikki Hodgson and Richard Fitzwilliams. And of course, we're looking for your calls on this. If you wish a request for the lovely Kathy from Phil, our editor, to say very happy birthday, and it comes with oodles and oodles of love. Those were his exact words. Love Island. Well, Alexandra says, I've been busy walking my dogs in the sunshine on Haitian Beach, enjoying the sunsets, then using a watering can to water my plants in pots. Then I put water out for hedgehogs and seeds in bird feeders. I have no time for Love Island. Susan from Cardiff says, I was watching paint dry instead of watching Love Island, and it was way more interesting. And Sarah says, I'd never watched Love Island before and took the mickey out of those who did, but my daughter and my son's girlfriend made me watch an episode and I was hooked. It was an emotional roller coaster for the couples inside, and I found myself teary-eyed watching their stories unfold. It was a break from Brexit. And Martin in Chichester says, instead of watching Love Island, people should have been reading books with their children or teaching them how to solder or make cakes. People should be ashamed of giving their lives to this mindless twaddle. Let's go to Joe, who's on the line in Nottingham. Joe, hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. You watched every second of it?
We did. We watched every episode, my daughter and I, yeah. 9 till 10, that was us every single evening, yeah, with the After Sun episodes on a Sunday as well.
Are you going to feel a bit lost now?
Yes, we are actually.
So
We're
are
both
we.
saying last night, what are we going to watch now? You
I know.
Between that time, what will we do?
Can you explain what it was about it that you really enjoyed so much? I'm finding it hard to know what it was. I think maybe it was a certain kind of innocence and romantic, I don't know, that they all wanted to fall in love. Was that it?
I think so, and I think with the drama as well, there was drama pretty much every night. You felt like you got to know them. You felt like you were on their journey with them. You know, it's quite a cliche, but a journey. You know, they'd gone on this journey. And I think for my daughter and I, it was very much something we had in common at that time. Like, I'm embarrassing because I'm her mum, of course. But when you're watching it together and you can talk about it afterwards, it was just something that we had in common for that hour of the day.
I found that it was very easy making conversation with absolutely everyone because you just mentioned it and everybody just took off with some kind of point of view or other. Do you feel you squandered 58 hours?
No, not at all, because as I say, I've got other children, and it was like, right, 9 o'clock is my time with my daughter. So 9 o'clock, we both, you know, we're in front of the telly talking about what's happening, talking about last night's episode, who we think is going to recouple with who. So I don't think so at all. It was quality time for me with my daughter.
But last night's final, a bit of a damp squib because we knew who'd won it from the very first minute, didn't we?
Yeah, we sort of did. It was a given, wasn't it?
If they make a series with Jack and Danny, will you watch it?
Oh, yes, I would watch that. Yes, I would buy the OK magazine photo shoot. Yes.
Would you really? Why, you just thought they were adorable?
Yes, I do. And I think with her dad as well, it just sort of made it. I thought it was great.
Do you think that their relationship will last?
Definitely. Yeah, those two I do. Yeah, not so sure about any of the others, but definitely those two.
What about when her grandparents came in? I just loved that bit.
Oh, it was so nice. Yeah, they're really
life is never going to be the same again, is it? Oh,
no,
dear.
down to earth,
Let me go to Martin. Hello, Martin. You weren't watching it, were you? You were doing something very different.
Hi, Vanessa. No,
Hello.
Belated honeymoon with my wife Sue. We had to postpone from last year because I was ill, and we managed to go right through France, Switzerland, and down to Lake Como and Lake Garda in Italy on the motorbike.
Oh, what a fabulous honeymoon. What a wonderful holiday. Wow.
Yeah.
And you say, though, that having been so ill has really given you the chance to kind of evaluate what's important to do and what's not important, and you wouldn't want to waste your time watching that kind of telly.
Listen, I wouldn't be that judgmental. I mean, you know, do more of what makes you happy is what I'm always saying to my friends. But, given the choice, I'd be out there, you know, touring and living life and meeting people, because in the end, the journeys in Europe are made by the people that you meet and some friends that we met out there. You know, it's a great thing to do. And I think for me, you've got to realise that you don't need anybody's permission to go and do these things. You just need to decide and go. And
that's a big deal, though, because I think lots of us don't realise that. We think that one day someone will give us a certificate saying, OK, now you can go and fulfil your dream.
Yeah, absolutely. But you really can do it, and of course, money's an issue. But it doesn't have to be something massive and dramatic, and it can be climb that hill you've wanted to climb, go and see that singer that you want to see.
Well, I'm glad you had such a great time, and thanks so much for the call. Ros in Warwick says, you asked what else you could have been doing instead of watching Love Island: cleaning the loo, unplugging the sink, washing your hair, clipping your toenails. This and other ghastly reality TV shows on TV sadly just show how vacuous those involved and watching are. Emma in Bromley, I'm 21. I love Love Island. It's 1 hour of TV in the day. I still managed to do a vast amount of things. Love Island began really important conversations about sexuality, mental health, and a million other things. Shirley in Salisbury, what an awful show. It lowers the morals of youngsters watching because you see people humping in bed. It's vacuous. I've been doing my gardening and I go out to see my friends instead. I wouldn't watch Love Island if you paid me £1 million. And Trevor from Maidstone says, my daughter Roxy and my partner Bev watched every episode of Love Island. I found it the biggest load of patronising dross I've ever seen on TV. I left the room, went into the kitchen and got on with cleaning the dishes left over from our evening meal. I suppose that was one way of getting me to wash up. That's Charles and Eddie and Would I Lie to You? That's it from me for today. Steve Wright's coming up next with a big show. His guests, the broadcaster Angela Rippon and chef Jack Stein. James Clapperton in Stockport picks the non-stop oldies. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. Lots of love. This is BBC Radio 2, online, on digital radio and on 88 to 91 FM.
With the BBC News at 2 o'clock, this is Jason Kay. The Crown Prosecution Service has dropped terrorism charges against a former soldier from London who fought with Kurdish forces against Islamic State militants in Syria. Jim Matthews, who's 43, was due to go on trial in November, accused of attending terrorist training camps. His barrister said his arrest more than 2 years ago was extraordinary and totally unjustified. It emerged that the Royal Navy rescued the Manchester Arena suicide bomber from Libya's civil war 3 years before he carried out the attack last May. Salman Abedi and more than 100 other British nationals were ferried from Tripoli to Malta by HMS Enterprise in 2014. The president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews has called on Labour to expel an ally of Jeremy Corbyn who described members of the Jewish community as Trump fanatics who were inventing allegations of anti-Semitism within the party. Peter Wilsman made the comments at a meeting of Labour's ruling executive committee, and he has since apologised. The Labour MP Luciana Berger said she was appalled.
How is that possible that was said in a meeting with at least 40 members of the National Executive Committee, and that subsequent to that no action is being taken? It's completely unacceptable.
The Charity Commission has urged aid agencies to work harder at showing they understand their responsibilities after a report found sex abuse was endemic in the sector. The Commons International Development Committee has been looking into allegations of abuse following revelations that senior staff at Oxfam had paid survivors of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti for sex. Farhan Aziz Haq, who speaks for the Secretary-General of the United Nations, said his organisation accepted it had to tackle the problem.
We are taking this seriously. What is needed in many ways is a change in culture, and we're trying to take a leadership role in doing just that, to make sure that across the board, no one accepts this as okay.
The former round-the-world sailor Tony Bullimore has died at the age of 79 after suffering a rare form of cancer. He was at the centre of a famous rescue in 1997 when he survived for 4 days in the upturned hull of his yacht after it capsized during a race. In a previous interview, he described the moment he was rescued by an Australian Navy ship.
I got out and then I started to slowly go up to the surface, and it got brighter and brighter, and when I broke surface, the amazing thing was I was looking straight at the Adelaide, and it was sitting there, it hove to, and it was just rocking with the sea, and I thought, God, a big grin come on my face. I said, I've been saved. I was quite amazed.